prefer the 53 myself.
En wie was de eerste keus voor de rol van de allereerste schurk?
The effort, Mr. Bond, you disappoint me.
Niemand minder dan Noel Coward.
Noel was asked to play Dr. No, and he was quite funny about it, because I became very friendly with Noel too.
Coward was een kennis van de Flemings op Jamaica. Zijn huis stond bovenop een heuvel, dat van Fleming stond aan zee.
I visited his house. He had died on GoldenEye in Jamaica, which Noel Coward, who was his neighbor, used to call Golden Eye, Ears, Nose, and Throat. He had sort of contempt for Fleming as a kind of poseur, whereas Noel Coward, was the genuine article, the genuinely sophisticated fellow.
Coward meende zelfs te weten wie model had gestaan voor James Bond.
No, I think that James Bond was Ian's dream fantasy of what he would like to be, you know, ruthless and dashing, and it's got, as Ian had, a schoolboy quality.
I think, no question, Fleming wanted to be Bond.
People do connect me with James Bond simply because I happen to like scrambled eggs and short-sleeved shirts and some of the things that James Bond does, but I certainly haven't got his guts nor his very lively appetite.
Fleming zelf was dus niet Bond. Hij was ook nooit spion geweest. Maar hij had wel in de oorlog bij de marine inlichtingendienst gewerkt.
His position really, to put it in modern parlance, he was the combination of an ideas man and a fixer. He seemed to live two lives. One during the daytime when he was working here, and the other at nighttime when he went out into the social world to his bridge parties and other things.
Hij kende dus echte spionnen. Had een van hen misschien model gestaan voor Bond?
The most obvious one was the chief, the MI6 station chief in Paris, who was a rather flamboyant character called Biffy Dunderdale. And he used to travel around Paris in a Rolls Royce, which seems to be kind of almost the wrong thing to do if you're a spy, sort of bringing attention to yourself. But apparently he used to do this. And he was very effective, in fact, in his job.
Fleming had een flamboyant voorbeeld genomen voor zijn held, maar de naam die hem gaf was tamelijk gewoontjes.
I wanted to find a really flat, quiet name. And one of my Bibles out here is James Bond's Birds of the West Indies. And I thought, well, now, James Bond, now that's a pretty quiet name. And so I simply stole it and used it.
De inspiratie voor zijn romantische locaties lag letterlijk naast de deur. Na de oorlog had hij een huis op Jamaica gekocht. Daar werkte hij een deel van het jaar aan zijn boeken.
He had this 3 months holiday that he'd earmarked for himself in Jamaica. He would go out there. He wouldn't hang around. He didn't socialize very much, or at least he had just 1 or 2 friends that he would see. And he would sit down and tap away at his typewriter. And by the time he came to go back to England, usually sort of end of March, perhaps early April, he had a novel in his bag.
Zijn boeken onderscheiden zich in 1 duidelijk opzicht van het Amerikaanse spionagegenre: de nationaliteit van Bond.
His books are very British Raj. I mean, he is very full of the Englishness more than just the Britishness of that character.
It not only distinguishes him from a lot of other action-adventure films, but I think it accounts for a lot of his personality and a lot of the traits that the Bond character has. His sophistication, his sense of dress, sense of decorum, his manners, his knowledge of fine wines and cigars and brandies and all kinds of things.
Oh, cheers, cheers. Pity about your liver, sir. It's an unusually fine Solera. 51, I believe.
There is no year for sherry, 007.
I was referring to the original vintage on which the sherry is based, sir. 1851. Unmistakable. Precisely.
I think that with the character of Bond, it may be the only time in modern era where the 2 words British and panache actually work together.
I think right now being English is a very popular thing to be. I mean, look at Austin Powers. I mean, it seems that everything English is very cool. And Bond has always epitomized not only the elegant Englishman, but the Englishman of all countries. You know, the man who fits in anywhere, the man who's got a certain air and a certain class, and who can really sweet-talk his way into any situation and out of any situation. And I think that's what people identify with.
Over there.
You missed, Mr. Bond.
Did I?
As you said, such good sport.
The way he behaves, the stiff upper lip, the sardonic smile, all the things that made Bond just is not American. The ironic character, Americans don't really understand irony, do they? I mean, that's very much an English sense of humour, which they love when they see it, but they're not able to reproduce it themselves. One other thing that Bond has, which most of these kind of films don't have, he has a certain amount of charm, and the film has charm.
Maar charme alleen kan Bond niet redden als hij van een berg stort. Dan moet je het hebben van heldenmoed en technische snufjes. Made in Britain, uiteraard.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
Bonjour, Monsieur Bond.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
This is the part I really like.
Wat maakt Bond als held en als personage zo onsterfelijk?
Backseat driver.
I think the reason that James Bond is surviving is because it sort of buys into that myth that we all have. It's the great myth about the heroes. And James Bond certainly is a very current hero.
He comes in and he's a strong, silent type, does the job and moves on. And I think that's very much about Bond. He's not someone who kind of regurgitates his drama or his past or that over everything. So I think that's a kind of a strong element in a heroic character.
Maar daar zal Bond niks aan hebben als hij niet tot zulke onwaarschijnlijke staaltjes in staat was. Maar heeft dit een diepere achtergrond? In de psychologie is sprake van archetypen, symbolische figuren die voor iedereen herkenbaar zijn. Figuren als de vreemdeling, een onbekende, iets wat dreigende buitenstaander die verschijnt, problemen oplost en weer verdwijnt.
Well, there's no question in my mind that Bond represents an archetype, and the stranger is probably the one that's most correct. You don't really want to know where he came from. You don't want to know who his parents are. You don't want to know what he has for breakfast or any of the personal details. That's what makes him so exciting, because, and it also makes it easier for you then to project your own ego, your own self into the character temporarily.
What is lovely is to believe in a man who's infallible and you're going to go along with him, and yet he's not Superman, so therefore you go along. And what have you gone along for? Only because you want to see James Bond.
Dat is de essentie van Bond, op verrassende manieren netelige situaties oplossen. Maar zijn Bondfilms meer dan alleen maar komische en fantasierijke actiefilms? Ian Fleming noemde ze sprookjes voor volwassenen.
I know a great restaurant in Karachi.
Fairy tales is quite good, but fairy tales can be dark and difficult and neurotic and violent and all that sort of stuff, which I think the Bond things are. But there is a kind of otherworldly, kind of escapist level to Bond, which I think is fun and which one wouldn't want to give up on.
Dat plezier komt het beste tot uiting in de wisselwerking tussen Bond en de meestertechneut Q.
Morning, Q. Sorry about the leg.
Huh.
Skiing?
Hunting. It's tested for 100. Now, 007, do please try and return some... Do please try and return some of this equipment in pristine order. Don't touch that! It's my lunch.
I think that over the time, Q has got fond of Bond, because in License to Kill, you know, he went out to help him when he shouldn't have.
Everything for a man on holiday. Explosive alarm clock, guaranteed never to wake up anybody who uses it. Dentonite toothpaste.
Bond won't return his gadgets. He always smashes things up.
I could do with some plastic.
The gadgets, you know, were so important. You know, the Aston Martin car spurting ink out the back or mud or whatever it was, and armor plating that comes into place, revolving number plates, all that stuff is just fantastic. And the ejector seat, I mean, I think Goldfinger was one of the best Bond films. It had all that stuff.
Sommigen vinden al die snufjes te veel van het goede.
When you get into you know, gadgetry and so forth and so on, I think you're in video game territory for me. There's no reality there at all. I mean, what the hell are we spending all this money going into space for? Doesn't make any sense at all.
I think there was a period where they felt that they had to go into competition with the new genre of adventure action film, which was very, very special effects driven, because they just discovered what they could do with special effects during that period, so everyone was maximizing it. And I think they lost the sense of what Bond's really about. And Moonraker, I mean, case in point, ridiculous. What are you doing with Bond on the moon? It's the most ridiculous notion.
Their up-to-date movies, technology has, in the last half of the century, become a very important element in everyone's life. Everyone's interested in it. There's also been some uncertainty as to where technology leads us, and there's a kind of there's an uncomfortable feeling out there that somehow we might get too clever. So technology is a two-edged sword.
Choose your next witticism carefully, Mr. Bond. It may be your last. The purpose of our two previous encounters is now very clear to me. I do not intend to be distracted by another. Good night, Mr. Bond.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Very often the technology is used in a negative way by the villains, or Bond's own technology fails him. So you come back to the age-old issue of man against machine, and those elements are very, very prominent in the films. Bond proves that the human element, the human spirit, and sometimes raw courage and determination can carry the day.